Hi, I'm Rebekah Ricks, and I'm here with our weekly show, The Brew. And a brew is a mixture of people, events, or things that come together to make a more potent whole. And today we hope to make your whole a whole lot better. So, of course, since it's The Brew, we do have to have our local cup of joe for every day. So we'll be doing that. But today we're talking about how to teach your kids to love to read, and some suggestions for books for boys and suggestions for books for girls. So when we talk about this is one of my favorite subjects. I'm super excited that we can talk about it. And in fact, instead of being at the office today, I'm actually in my house, in my dining room turned library. So as you can tell, this is my own little personal collection, part of it, of books. So I love to read, and I try to read a book every week if I can, or reread or go through. So I hopefully can talk a little bit about some of my favorite books, which is always the best part, getting to tell what we like the best about reading books. So if you're a reader or not. So something that I've come into lately that I think is one of my favorite things to do in the world, and I think it works so well, really in getting kids to learn how to read, is to do read alouds. And there's a lot of different views on this, and I have to say I was super skeptical. I kind of thought wasn't one of the things that I thought would work. So last year I decided I was teaching a 4th through 6th grade class, and we did several read alouds along with books that they read on their own, but read alouds. And they loved it. And I tried it with my junior hires and my high schoolers all the way around. Kids love to be read aloud to. And one of my favorite read alouds to do is The Mysterious Benedict Society, which isn't a book a lot of people have heard of, but it's so good, especially for that 4th through 6th grade level. And it's about 4 kids who are orphans who join a mysterious society led by a man named Mr. Benedict, and they're trying to stop the world from being taken over. And there's actually a series of books on that I really enjoy as read alouds. Last year we also did Charlotte's Web. And one thing we did with a read aloud, which is a whole different thought, but Charlotte's Web has classic illustrations in it. So as I would read the story aloud, I would give them a picture from the classic from one of the illustrations that I printed out for each kids, and they glued into a book, and then they had to write underneath the picture what happened in this picture, what happened in this part of the story, to help them remember it. So I was really excited about that. So I am a big fan of read alouds. A read aloud that I did with one of my older classes is really good, is Ender's Game for 7th grade, 7th and 8th. Sorry, Ender's Game is really good for upper. I really like The Giver's really good for high school. So anything that you can do that are kind of, that you can do, and there's lots of activities to do with that. Now, something else I really like to do along with that, especially if you're not sure, and part of it is comprehension, making sure that they see it like a movie in their head. So sometimes if they don't read it, if there's a little bit of a break in that, verbalizing and visualizing, I make sure that they can, when you're listening to it, it's like a movie in their head. So for me, that comes naturally, but not for all students. And some children, it doesn't come as a natural thing, and that's why they don't enjoy reading, because it doesn't quite flow like that. But we do have every year here at the Homeschool Connection. Another thing is read aloud. First thing we were talking about is kind of reading aloud. Secondly is to have books to read along with something else you're learning. So for history, all of our history classes, they do books along with what they're learning in history, so that they kind of have a background for what's going on with it. A great example would be for world history. We had a whole world history reading list, which you can find on our website, but they did Gilgamesh the Hero, which was kind of a spin-off that. They read Robin Hood when they were kind of going through that section. So kind of make your reading even more relatable to what you're studying. Another thing to kind of encourage readers is let them know what you're reading and share it. Right now, I am still in the middle of Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged, which is a mammoth book, and it takes forever, and it's a little bit, she's got long speeches in it, but it's a very, very, very good book. It's I haven't read it in a long time, so I'm reading that. I've been reading it. I've been working on it for a couple weeks now, so we'll do that. So sometimes if you're sharing your interest, letting kids hear that you're reading or books that you've encouraged reading always really help. Another thing I always like to do to encourage reading, especially if you're doing a read aloud, or if you're just having them read a book as a group, is to is to see is while you're reading it, if they can draw it for you, if they can draw the pictures for you, or they can do things like that, so that they're visualizing the story as you go along. Another thing I like to do sometimes is have them make stick figure story or draw the characters. Or one of my favorite, we did this one year for middle school English. We were reading And Then There Were None, and I had each of them find the movie. If they were casting that movie, what person would they have play that movie? So they had to find actors or pictures of people that they envisioned. And it was really interesting to see how everybody kind of picked someone different for each character. Kind of interesting for that one. I like it. Another thing to do is make sure when you're having kids read, don't have them just read books. Encourage them to read other things. Newspapers, magazines, even comic books that have the pictures. But it encourages them to read more and more different types of things. I'm also a big audiobook person. I enjoy audiobooks. I listen to books a lot. So I like to listen to a book while I'm working. I have a book going while I'm working, but sometimes that helps too. If they're seeing it on the page and hearing it at the same time, read along with it, especially if it's a harder book for an older student in high school or different things like that. Also try to pick books that have interest with what they like. An example would be ask them, what's your favorite book? Oh, I don't know. Well, what's your favorite thing to do? Play football. Oh, well, there's this really good book about a football player. Rudy is a really great book for most kids to read. It's about a football player. So kind of find a book that goes with their interests. Now, I've met kids who, I'm a fiction person. I enjoy some good fiction. But there are some kids who are nonfiction. They really like technical books or nonfiction books. So let them find something to read about what they like. And they will tell you too. If a student suggest a book, it's usually a great book. So an example was I had a student, again, this was a middle school English class, 8th grade, and we were really into reading. We were reading And Then There Were None and lots of different books. And I asked this student, asked them if they had any favorite books they wanted to share. And this child told me Inkheart, which I had never heard of before. And I thought, well, what is that? So I read it. Oh my goodness, it's an incredible book. Another great read aloud that a lot of people hadn't heard. It's a man who is kind of cursed that every time he reads a book, he will go into that book and he won't read a book out loud anymore because he went into it and got trapped in it and couldn't get out. Very, very good book. Great series. There's three of them. Some of my favorite books ever. Really good books. But that was suggested to me by a student. And so when kids tell you, oh, this is really, really good. Another thing I really like to do is word of mouth is important. When you start hearing that someone's book is very good or a children's book is great, I scan through the top teen books and the top children's books on the New York Times list. And I try to read them because I think what we're having our children read is important. And, some of them I read are, some of them are garbage. But some of them, every once in a while, there are some really good ones that have some great lessons and something really good for them to learn from. So maybe lots of times word of mouth, or if another student can recommend a book, that's the best. Of course, kids recommending to other kids is always the way to go. And have lots of books accessible to them. I have a variety of books, and the more you read. Now, if you're not a reader, which is okay because we're not all readers, but you do want to encourage your child to read, Google it. There's lots of synopsis that you can read really quick to see if it's a type of book that you want to have and don't, for them to do. Now, also, it's really important to have them read on grade level. There's something called AR Finder. So AR is kind of a book level, and it will say if you go to the website arfinder.com, you can put in that you're a parent, you can type the book's name, and it'll tell you the AR level. Now the AR level might say 3.7, which means third grade, 7th month. So there's 9 months. It might also be 4.3, 4th grade, 3rd month, things like that. So it just really depends on the book level. So an example would be Frankenstein is a great book. I love Frankenstein, but it's actually like a 12-3. So the vocabulary and every different things are very, very hard for them to do. Whereas you might look up another book, which I really, really love, like The Whipping Boy or Number Our Stars, are both great books for high schoolers and junior hires, but it's actually a 4.3. So even if they're reading a little bit below, but it's good content, you know that it's a good book. Another thing that a friend of mine thought of, and she does this with her kids, especially your younger ones, if you have a reluctant reader, have them read out loud. So I love to read out loud. I like it. Or to be read to. And a lot of times when I read out loud, I'll let kids color, do whatever they want as long as they're listening. But kids like to read aloud too. And I know if you have more than one child, sometimes listening to every single one of them read will be a mess. Takes a long time. So if you have them a read aloud buddy, a special teddy bear or stuffed animal that they read aloud to, or even their dog. I know someone who has their child read aloud to their dog, and it's great. Or have an older child that they read aloud to, a reading mentor or someone that helps them. And don't forget too that it's really important to make sure that we talked about them being accessible, not just accessible, but good books accessible, because there's a lot of authors nowadays that I wouldn't recommend. There are some books that I don't think that, especially teen books, that have things in it that I don't think, that are appropriate, but then some are. So really, as a parent, trying to read the books before, not all of them, but as many as you can before, at least look them up on Wikipedia and see if it's a story that you would like. So real quick, I want to go through some of my favorites for different grade levels. For 4th through 6th grade, I love The Whipping Boy and Number Our Stars. Number the Stars is about a girl during the Holocaust. Great book for kids. Little House on the Prairie is always a good book. I had a mom lately tell me that their son was, he's a 5th grader, and Little House on the Prairie was on our reading list, and that he was grumpy about having to read Little House on the Prairie. But then it turned out to be one of his favorite books. So Little House on the Prairie, great book for them to read. Inkheart, I love for both boys and girls. Mr. Popper's Penguins is always good. Caddy Woodland is about a girl, but those are good for high schoolers all the way across. Another for my middle schoolers now, it depends really on your middle schoolers. You can push them in different ways, but for middle schoolers, I'm really big on Alice in Wonderland and The Wizard of Oz are great to pair together, along with like Dr. Dolittle. Those are all good. And then you can do kind of the classics by Louisa May Alcott. Little Men and Little Women are good. I always like middle schoolers to read those. And then I kind of like to go through for middle schoolers, if they're a little bit more advanced middle schoolers, and do some Agatha Christie, do Sherlock Holmes, do some things like that that are a little bit harder reading, but they're really, really good for them. And then kind of bring that into your high schoolers. Now, for high school, I like them to read according to what they're studying in history. So for this year, we did world history. And so they read a lot that went through that. So it was kind of hard for me to find books that were from the ancient time, but we did the Golden Goblet and the Bronze Bow. They did Beowulf is great, but we did a different version, not the original version, but a little bit of a different version for them so they could read it. Robin Hood, Prince and the Pauper, especially if it's the Unabridged by Mark Twain, kind of making sure that your high schoolers are getting a lot of classics in and not just reading a lot of fluff. One of my favorite ones that's a little bit newer for them to read is a book that I think is really important for everyone to read. It's not newer, is Night, which is about the Holocaust and Auschwitz. It's very, very good. But then I like them for this year. We're going to have them read Unbroken and Lost Names and The Kite Runner. Now, The Kite Runner is about Afghanistan. So those are kind of newer books that have come out, some of them with movies. But really, here's the thing. You read whatever you personally like and feel passionate about and love, another child is going to probably love and feel passionate about and enjoy because you enjoy it. So when you're trying to pick books for your kids, pick something that you like to help that reader. One of my least favorite, don't tell anybody, my least favorite books ever, which I always feel is on every reading list, is Herman Melville. I am not a huge fan of Moby Dick. It's not one of my favorite classics. So I hardly ever have anyone read Moby Dick because I just don't care for it very much. If we're going to read Shakespeare, I'm not a huge Shakespeare fan, but I love Julius Caesar, so we'll read Julius Caesar. You can pick different. There's so many good classics that you can pick from that you don't have to pigeonhole something that you don't care for or you don't like. It's not necessarily, kids can tell if you don't like it. So I always try to pick books that I personally enjoy and love. Now, I've done before, had picked reading lists, and another teacher taught my reading list, and they didn't enjoy the books like I enjoyed the books. So it wasn't as much fun for them to teach. So make sure when you're picking books for your kids, it's something you enjoy, something that the child enjoys, maybe something that you can share and bring together. Before I go, I have one more resource that I absolutely love for books. It's called Book Regs. And what Book Regs is they have a teacher side, like with lesson plans, and then they have like a student side that has gives information about the characters. You can do a monthly subscription. It's about $25 a month, or you can buy per book. And really what it does is it has questions, quizzes, tests, essay questions you can ask if you want them to do it. And basically it's a whole literature unit based on each book. And they have almost every new book that you can think of. So I really enjoy that. If you're looking for my couple last minute thoughts and suggestions, if you're looking for some fun books that start and kind of level up, a series of unfortunate events, those are good read alouds and fun to do. And it's a long series you can go through. A newer book for older kids that I do like is The Hunger Games. I think the first one was well written. I'm not so keen on the other ones, but the first one has a lot of good themes that you can talk about. And so it's always good to have books that have good ideas and good thoughts about it. Even though they make the movie out of it, and it kind of ruins it for most kids if they've seen the movie. Try to get a book that they can do that's got a lot of really good descriptions in it. Anything by Mark Twain, he's very, very good for older students to read. So for those high school, because it's a little bit lighter reading, but it's really important for them to get a variety and to pick things that you like and that they like. So hopefully that was a little bit helpful, that you got some good information, some suggestions there. Maybe you'll feel motivated to go out and read a book tonight. But hopefully that was good. If you like it, share it with us, and we'll be back Friday morning for our extra shot of espresso. So hopefully share this post, like us. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, pretty much everything. And hopefully you'll check us out on Friday. Have a great day.